You may have heard the phrase theater kid occupied government. It's an expression that in normal circumstances is not meant to be taken literally. It's been used in cases where, say, the Biden administration invites TikTok influencers to the White House, or when Eric Swalwell starts crying in Congress because of a meme that depicts Donald Trump rescuing cats from Haitian migrants. These are situations in which Democrat politicians act like theater kids, or when they promote influencers who seem like theater kids. But in general, no one is actually suggesting that theater kids are literally occupying the government and conducting its day-to-day operations. It's an expression. It's meant to parody Democrats in exaggerated terms to highlight how absurd things become when they're in power. But by this point, we're all very familiar with the Democrats' uncanny ability to turn absurd and exaggerated situations into reality. They're becoming impossible to parody. And as if to prove that point, a Democrat on the Supreme Court has just decided to embrace her inner theater kid in the most literal sense. As you may have seen, Kentanji Brown Jackson had her debut on Broadway on Saturday night, appearing in the musical And Juliet, which apparently is a queer reimagining of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. She plays a character called Queen Mab, who, according to a poster from the production, has she/her pronouns, and she appears in two scenes that were written specifically for her for a one-night-only performance. Here's some of the promo video that they released after her appearance. Watch.
Female empowerment. Sick.
Welcome to the first day of rehearsal.
Thank you. So excited to be here. This has been a dream of mine.
Tonight, we have a very special guest, Supreme Court Justice Kentanji Brown Jackson!
Now, just from the short clips that appear in the promo, you can already tell that she can't act. She actually managed to bungle one of the few lines she had when she gets interrupted by the crowd and just stops mid-sentence. And other clips from her performance demonstrate that she can't really sing either. But before I subject you to that footage, I need to make the point that even if Kentanji Brown Jackson could act and sing, she still shouldn't have made the decision to appear in this play for several reasons. For one thing, it's completely unwatchable political propaganda. In particular, it's a full-on embrace of every ridiculous tenet of gender ideology, including the idea that people can be non-binary. That's notable because gender ideology is currently before the Supreme Court in the case pertaining to Tennessee's ban on child castration. During oral arguments in that case, Kentanji Brown Jackson compared Tennessee's ban to a prohibition against interracial marriage, made it very clear that she's a partisan on this issue, and now she appears to be openly celebrating that fact in a play centered around these kinds of ideas, which should be disqualifying all on its own. Now, to give you some idea of what this new version of Romeo and Juliet is like, there's a character called May, who apparently is Juliet's best friend and who identifies as non-binary and uses he, she, they pronouns. Watch.
I'm not a girl, don't tell me what to believe. I'm just trying to find a woman in me.
Hi, I'm Justin David Sullivan. I use the pronouns he, she, and they, and I play Juliet's best friend, May.
While I'm in between.
May goes on a journey of self-discovery, finds love, and explores their gender identity.
So just to restate, this is the play that a sitting justice on the U.S. Supreme Court decided to participate in. The justice, who couldn't define the word woman during her confirmation hearing, saying that she's not a biologist, is now endorsing propaganda about gender that's written by activists on Broadway. But again, even if this play wasn't a piece of lazy activism, even if it were the best play on Broadway, there's still no justification for a Supreme Court justice to appear in it. I mean, at the same time, it's obvious why Kentanji Brown Jackson decided to go through with this, as if you couldn't tell from all the praise and applause she received in that clip. She gave an interview with CBS where she explained her reasoning.
It's a story about female empowerment and, women's ability to do what they want to do, to control their own destiny. I think it's a wonderful message and obviously very fun. Other justices actually have done somewhat similar things. I just also think it's very important to remind people that justices are human beings, that we have dreams, and that we are public servants, and we're not so detached from the people that we serve. I guess this moment reinforces for me that anything is possible. I didn't let anything sort of hold me back or stop me, the obstacles that I would think were pretty obvious based on my background. And so I think the lesson is don't give up and don't be deterred.
So there's a lot to think about here, but maybe the best part is when she says that she's appearing in this Broadway play with a scene that was written just for her because she wants to remind everyone that she's a public servant, going out of her way to appear in a play so she can attract as much attention as possible and fulfill her childhood fantasy. But it's really for your benefit, peasant. So just shut up and clap as she breaks the glass ceiling or whatever. Then she goes on to say that it's shocking that she was able to achieve this lofty goal given her background and how all these obstacles were stacked against her. But here's the thing, no obstacles were stacked against her. Solely on account of her race and gender, she was admitted to a prestigious law school. Then she became a Supreme Court justice after just 1 year of serving on an appellate court because Joe Biden needed to nominate a black woman. And now she's a Broadway actress because once again, she's getting preferential treatment instead of being assessed on merit. So the total lack of self-awareness here and the all-encompassing narcissism is almost as bad as her decision to appear in this play in the first place. This is not a woman who should be deciding cases at traffic court, much less the highest court in the country. But she says it's totally fine because other justices have kind of done similar things in the past. She was apparently thinking of this moment from Ruth Bader Ginsburg's career when she did a poor job of reciting some feminist propaganda at the opera one time. Watch.
The best of the house of Krakentorp have open but not empty minds. The best are willing to listen and learn. No surprise then that the most valorous Krakentorpians have been women.
Now, the whole clip is even longer, but no one should have to be subjected to it. It goes without saying that, this is not the kind of thing we want Supreme Court justices to emulate. It's just painful to watch. In the case of Kentanji Brown Jackson, some people have tried to defend this as a harmless, if deeply cringy hobby. Maybe we should overlook this, they say, because after all, Scalia liked going to the opera or whatever. But even aside from the fact that attending the opera is nothing like what Jackson did, Scalia was also a skilled and competent jurist. Kentanji Brown Jackson is not. Her opinions are riddled with factual errors, for one thing. At one point, for example, she stated in an opinion that white doctors are significantly more likely to kill black babies than black doctors are, but she overlooked the fact that white doctors are typically better trained, so they tend to see babies of all races who are in critical condition, the worst cases. On top of that, Kentanji Brown Jackson also got the numbers completely wrong. She said that according to a study, the survival rate for black infants who have black doctors was more than double their survival rate when they have white doctors. In reality, the study showed a difference of survival rates of less than 0.2%, which is essentially nothing, especially when you factor in the different levels of experience the doctors have. This wasn't some trivial error. This was contained in Jackson's dissent to the Supreme Court's landmark ruling that overturned affirmative action. Her reasoning for trying to uphold affirmative action was based on obvious lies. But she never apologized for that. She never demonstrated a hint of self-reflection in this context or any other context. Instead, she's now feeding her ego on Broadway. But the time she spent practicing for her Broadway performance would have been better utilized reading and learning how to do the job she's been assigned. Of course, if she did that, then she wouldn't get to do a media tour to promote herself and her new book, which just came out a few months ago. Somehow, Kentanji Brown Jackson secured a $1 million advance for that memoir, even though nobody read it, and it fell off the New York Times bestseller list in like a month. The sales figures haven't been released, but as we all know, books written by famous leftists are a bit like Hunter Biden's paintings. They have no value, but strangely, someone is always willing to pay a lot of money for them. Now, I'm not suggesting that Kentanji Brown Jackson is getting money from some nefarious source. I have no idea. What I am suggesting is that Kentanji Brown Jackson has been given an awful lot of attention for someone as thoroughly unintelligent and mediocre and narcissistic as she is. And her latest turn as an actress on Broadway, a bad one, is just the most recent example of that. This is the Hamilton phenomenon all over again. It's yet another occasion for rich New York elites to feel virtuous by applauding mediocrity in the name of social justice. And above all else, the reason this whole farce is so galling is that we used to expect just a certain amount of decorum and dignity and seriousness from people who hold important positions in government. And we should still expect that. or else we'll just never get it. And that is why Kentanji Brown Jackson and the queer-themed Romeo and Juliet remake that she just appeared in are both today canceled. Thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to listen to my full podcast on the go, you can check out The Matt Walsh Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.